Hi, it's Matthew McAllister here. I'm at Sika's Guitars in Karlsruhe in Germany, and today's tutorial video is all about fingering and how you choose fingering for a piece of music. Just before I show an example and demonstrate two different options with fingering in music, I want to talk just a little bit about how important it is to not just decide on one fingering and settle, right? Okay, I mean, sometimes when we're learning the guitar, it's quite complex to make sure our right hand is set up well and our left hand has a useful, logical, effective fingering. And for some guitarists, that just seems to be about as far as they go with fingering. Now, when we're playing a piece of music, quite often the pieces of music have repetition in them. So they have sections that will be repeated, sections that might come back round again if the piece is in rondo form. You might hear a theme of a piece many times throughout the duration of the entire work. So sometimes I think it's not just enough to, in a repeat, play a different dynamic. So if you did it loud the first time, let's do it quiet the second time. And it's maybe not enough to just change the tone colour. If you did it one time Tasto, maybe you should do it Ponticello the next. For me, that's quite basic. That's, you know, loud, soft, spiky sound, warm sound. Okay, they're quite basic ideas of just simply changing the colour of the music you're playing. But the fingering is something that you can completely change the character of the piece without actually necessarily having to change the dynamic. Maybe, for example, if you're just doing quiet loud or sharp warm, maybe those contrasts are too big. They're too demonstrative within the context of the music. Maybe what you should be thinking is, if I change the fingering, I get a completely different character and personality to the music. Now, changing the fingering for repeat of a section or changing the fingering in a particular moment of a piece can be quite challenging, and it can be something that takes a lot more work when you're building a piece for the first time. But the benefits are massive because it can open up so many areas of the fingerboard. It can open up so many different ways of playing, and it actually makes you a better listener. When you're then listening to other performances or other players, you can notice some of the nuances that they do with fingering all the time to vary the character and the personality of the music. Now, I'm going to show you some fingering for a very short section of a piece. It's a piece that's often transcribed across the guitar. It's the prelude from Johann Sebastian Bach's first cello suite. Now, that prelude opens So, you'll know the piece. The piece is very, very famous, usually transcribed across the guitar into the key of D major, from the original G major on the cello. Now, in the second part of that piece, there's a lovely descending run in the guitar. It's kind of a major scale that keeps going down and reaching a lower pitch each time. So it starts. Going down like this. So in sequence it sounds like. Okay, so very simply descending with an A pedal in the bass, starting on the G at the top, to G that time, then F sharp at the top, and it sets up that beautiful bit at the end of the prelude. Start that very expressive ending. So it's kind of a linking section, but it's really quite pivotal because it goes from the character of the first part into this quite virtuosic sounding chromatic ending that begins to appear. Most times that I've heard it played, it literally is just fingered in first position. So very simply in first position, just descending all the way down like a major scale. Very simple. Now the limitations of that are that you're kind of retracing the same ground that you've been on so many times. You play the first time, you go straight back up, So it becomes quite functional to the ear. It becomes just literally like a group of notes, the sort of same pattern repeated and repeated and repeated. Now it's quite comfortable to play because yes, it's in first position, but it's very, in my opinion, quite boring and quite colourless because it's just there right in front of you in first position and doesn't really say anything to my ear, doesn't give me any more shape or any more colour. So the fingering that I have for that, I'll show you them back to back so you can hear it. The normal fingering, or that fingering in third position, which is really a campanella fingering. And what I mean by campanellaing is bell ringing. So it's the idea of the notes over and hanging. So the notes are getting a chance to all bleed into each other, which gives the piece a really different feeling. In that moment, you could sort of consider that quite a harp-like sound or a bell ringing sound, just like the idea of campanella. But what I like in terms of the feel of the music and the flow of music is this not feeling like I go back to retrace the same ground I've already played. For me here, it feels like I have a much more cascading effect so that the music's falling like a waterfall. And in the context of the piece, it shows that there's a different character coming. It really helps set up that next moment. So the option, that has for me a much more ethereal, much more cascading-like effect. And it's just one very simple example where you can change massively the character of the music by reinterpreting it through fingering. I haven't changed the dynamic, I haven't really changed the tone colour, so the way I want to play and feel about that music stays the same, but the fingering changes the character massively. Now that's just one simple example within one piece of Bach. You can extrapolate that and take that idea to all sorts of the pieces that you're playing, and you can start to adapt the fingering for different sections that you're working on. It's hugely important even to just start to consider this because it gives music that could become quite tired and quite predictable new life. It breathes new life into the music. So don't always think that your fingering is set in stone. The fingering should be something that's very flexible, and you should have, if your technique is good enough, these fingerings ready for you to explore however you feel. I mean, not completely spontaneously. It might be quite hard to just change in the moment, but also if you have an element of that in your playing, that's no bad thing because it shows that you know your fingerboard well and you know the options of where you can play all these notes on the guitar. The guitar, unlike the piano, where there's only one key for each note, there are so many different positions we can play the same note. If I just think of the high E string, there's me found 4 different ways to play it already. One a harmonic, one on the G string, one on the B string, and one open. So I already have so many different opportunities to change the sound and the colour of the note that I want to play. So keeping our fingering in the one position is a little bit limited, to be honest. So just a very brief introduction to trying to change your fingering, thinking about different options, and being a little bit more explorative. It's a bit of an adventure trying to choose these different fingerings. So, you know, whatever piece you're working on just now, don't just take the fingering that's in the book, the edition that's in front of you. Think a little bit more creatively. What suits your hand, what suits the shape of your hand, and think outside the box a little bit and see if you can come up with a more creative and more musical fingering. Good luck. Bye for now.